Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing, I'm going to pronounce it Polybius by Collin Armstrong. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Collin Armstrong, I couldn't find very much on him. It says in the flap of the book as well as his website that he's been working in Hollywood for about a decade, over a decade, as a producer and a writer. This is his first novel. It looks like he lives in California. Couldn't find much about him other than that. This book is based on an urban legend from the 1980s about a video game called Polybius that was, in the legend, known to cause problems for the people who played it. And that's really kind of the core part of the story is this group of teenagers and their parents are trying to get to the bottom of this video game that kind of shows up at the shop one day mysteriously, and they're trying to understand why people seem to be so addicted to it and where it comes from, what's the purpose of it. And there's these kind of tensions in this small town in Northern California called, I believe, Tasker's Bay in the early 1980s, and what happens when this video game is kind of introduced into their town. So just kind of spoiler free, that's kind of over the overview about it. I thought that there are kind of horror elements of the book, and I thought the horror elements were done really well. There are some really horrific things that happen. I think that the story and the mystery of the story is interesting and kind of keeps you involved. I think that the main characters were pretty likable. I think that it moves okay. I think it moves pretty well in the book. There's some times where I kind of put it down for a little bit and came back to it, but the pacing wasn't too bad. There's one exception that I'll talk about, but overall I thought it was like competently done. I think that the problems I had with it were, while I liked the characters, I felt that a lot of them felt stock or stereotypical, and I wanted maybe a little bit more there. Whenever you're dealing with some of these characters are in high school, and whenever you're dealing with high school students, you kind of have the difficulty of kind of balancing real life stakes with what feels like can be melodrama for people who are reading it from outside the high school experience. And there just felt like there was like one or two layers missing to kind of make the characters fully rounded. There are two main characters, and there's kind of some ancillary characters. The two main characters are probably the most developed, and then kind of outside of that they become less and less developed. There's one character in particular who was introduced at the beginning of the novel, and I thought that she was going to have more impact on the novel as it went along, and kind of the book kind of sidearms her, and I was kind of a little bit bummed because I thought that character had the possibilities to be a more interesting character in the book, but it really does ultimately kind of come down to these like smaller core group of characters. Some of the other side characters too are kind of introduced at the beginning and are kind of put on the shelf for a while, and then they come back, and I was like, I don't remember who this person was. Not that there's like this huge cast of characters, but I thought there maybe could have been a little bit more ways for the author to have interwoven the stories a little bit more, so they didn't feel to be so. Who are you again? Towards the end of the novel when they kind of come back. Um, I thought the horror elements were done really well. I think the action scenes were written pretty well. The issue that I had, the other major issue that I had was really the pacing. I felt for the most, I'd say 75% of the book, it's paced relatively well, and then it just feels like we're really having to get to the end pretty rapidly, and so you kind of feel the pacing quicken as you think that there may have been certain scenes that I would have either condensed or cut from the novel to have made the beginning of the first part of the novel a little bit thinner to give you a little bit more space at the back end. It's 336 pages, so it's not an overly long novel, but I think that it could have been. There are parts of it that I enjoyed. There's certainly very horrific parts that I enjoyed. I felt that if you're looking for something that kind of is like a Stranger Things Stephen King inspired book, there's very clear elements of Stephen King. There's one novel in particular that I don't want to give it away because I think it kind of tells a lot of what the book is. And definitely the Stranger Things of the 80s vibe in a small town. Um, but if you like those, then you may want to check this out. I will say, uh, just, content warning, trigger warning, whatever. There is abuse towards animals, which I think puts some people very much off of a book. And there is also a pretty graphic suicide that happens in the book. And if you are, if those things kind of make it uncomfortable for you to read a book, then don't read this one. But overall, I'd say this is like probably you could have probably a 12th grader read this without a problem. I don't think it's so graphic that it's like as long as they understand those two things kind of going in. Overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought that the ending could have been a little bit stronger. The pacing could have a little bit more. The mystery, maybe it could have been a little have some more other pieces to it. It just kind of felt not out of nowhere because I think it is built up of what it is, but you're just maybe kind of like okay. It wasn't the most satisfying mystery in the world. I don't think ultimately the purpose of the book is the mystery. I think the purpose is really following these characters on this journey of discovery of what is going on. I think that's kind of the bigger point of the book. If you like thrillers, if you like horror, if you like teenagers in peril, solving mysteries, kind of like a Scooby Doo, but for today's audience, you may enjoy this book. I don't know what I'm going to be reading next time. If you've enjoyed this, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll leave a link below to my Twitter channel. Till next time, bye.